evening, welcome to the Pearl Report. I'm Diana Lin. A 5-month public consultation is afoot on ways to elect the chief executive by universal suffrage in 2017. Pan-Democrats fear pledges of democracy for Hong Kong are hollow and that chief executive candidates unpopular with Beijing will somehow be screened out. As producer Chris Lincoln reports, the stakes for this round of political reforms are higher than ever.
The Chinese leadership has made a promise. We would like to see this promise fulfilled.
People are really, really smart about whether or not they're going to have a real choice. And if they don't get a real choice, we're going to have real problems.
I would urge Hong Kong people not to just sit back and wait quietly for something to happen. It won't.
I really hope that Hong Kong people can figure out a way to negotiate with the central government so that it will not be a major threat to mainland China.
If you look around the world, all these political conflicts can only be resolved successfully by negotiation, other than by violence or revolution.
And let's not go to threats like, if you don't do this, we will occupy Central, we will turn Hong Kong into Bangkok.
Hong Kong people has already fought for democracy for nearly 30 years. We want a true success this time.
Hong Kong voters are all supposed to have a say in who gets elected as chief executive in 2017. And while they're meant to cast ballots, they might not be able to choose a Pan-Democrat. The consultation document on electoral reforms issued by the government in December suggests any candidate might need to be approved by a majority of members in a new nominating committee. In the last 2 elections, a CE candidate needed the support of just 1/8 of the members of the election committee. Joseph Cheng is the convener of the Alliance for True Democracy, the umbrella group for Pan-Democrats.
Most pro-democracy group activists would say as long as the threshold was not further raised, that would probably be acceptable. That is to say, as long as someone who can secure 1/8 of the votes.
The old rules allowed Pan-Democrats Alan Leung in 2007 and Albert Ho in 2012 to get enough support to run CE campaigns. But there was no universal suffrage then, so there was no threat either one would garner enough support to become CE in a poll of 1,200 mostly government-friendly election committee members.
If the ultimate electoral package is vetoed, that would probably be because it provides for a high threshold for nomination so that the Pan-Democrats cannot enter the race.
Hong Kong University law professor Albert Chen sits on the NPC Standing Committee's Hong Kong Basic Law Committee. He says in law there's scope for the Hong Kong government to set a low or a high threshold.
If they choose to have a low nomination threshold system, then Chinese government will be worried that somebody who they consider to be a non-patriot, somebody who is considered to be confrontational towards the Chinese government will become a candidate. If they choose to propose a high nomination threshold system, they can justify it by saying that nomination by the nominating committee means nomination by the majority of the members of the nominating committee.
In the consultation document, the government says chief executive candidates are to be nominated
in accordance with democratic procedures.
And then in brackets it says,
that is the so-called organizational nomination or collective nomination.
It's also referred to as an institutional nomination.
The pro-democracy movement never anticipated this kind of proposal of institutional nomination.
It's first a footnote in the consultation paper to say NPC Law Committee Chairman Chow Xiaoyang mentioned this type of nomination in a speech last year. By the next page in the consultation, the government is asking,
How could the democratic procedures reflect the requirement of organizational nomination?
This is the first mention. It's not anywhere in the Basic Law.
Former Chief Secretary and lawmaker Anson Chan leads Hong Kong 2020, a group that has published an alternative to the government's consultation document.
So we have suggested that if the government now wants to argue that organizational voting is consistent with the Basic Law, then first of all, it has to explain why, and it has to tell the people of Hong Kong how it's actually going to work in practice.
How about the people who make up the nominating committee? Article 45 of the Basic Law says,
"The ultimate aim is the selection of the chief executive by universal suffrage upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with democratic principles."
The government maintains
The broadly representative composition of the election committee, as provided in Annex 1 to the Basic Law, is of important reference value.
for the 2012 CE election, there were 250,000 eligible voters, some of them corporate, to choose the 1,200-member election committee. Albert Chen proposes a nominating committee of no more than 1,600 people, adding district councillors. His plan would expand the number of voters, return nominating committee members to between 600 and 800,000 people. Some of the corporate votes would be converted to individual votes. The Civic Party's Ronnie Tong suggests more than 1 million people should be able to vote for the nominating committee. The Alliance for True Democracy, the umbrella organization for Pan-Democrats, says it doesn't want a nominating committee at all.
Because we believe that whatever the reform process, ultimately, the establishment is going to control a majority of this nomination committee. Election doesn't mean competitive election to ordinary Hong Kong people. And as a result, you see there has been tremendous support for the idea of civil nominations.
That would be a chief executive nomination by any eligible voter in Hong Kong.
The Chinese government, from what its officials have said, apparently considers citizens' nomination to be inconsistent with Article 45 of the Basic Law.
It's up to a nominating committee to nominate. The Basic Law only gives the nominating right to a nominating committee.
Another Hong Kong University law faculty member says a candidate put forward by public nomination could be permitted to stand for election if a certain percentage of the nominating committee agrees.
We can talk about what level of support you need from the nominating committee for such an endorsement, whether it's 40%, 50%, 20%, 25%.
Sometime after this public consultation ends in May, the government is to release its own ideas on reform, and there will be another round of consultation. A proposal for legislators to vote on is expected by the end of this year.
Without Pan-Democrat support, it can't be approved. If you want a proposal acceptable to Pan-Democrats, Beijing would probably have to let someone who they didn't accept or trust before take part in the election, or even have a chance to win. Beijing has to consider this question.
Anson Chan claims the government is deliberately dragging out the consultation.
It leaves concrete proposals and genuine consultation to the very, very last minute, and then the government will turn to the people of Hong Kong and say, sorry, we're running out of time. We have to make a decision on this. So it's upon your head if nothing gets through.
Most of the consultation document deals with the chief executive election, but change is possible for the next LegCo elections in 2016.
We're already in 2014. Not even so much as serious discussion about how functional constituencies should be reorganized, abolished, in phases, in one fell swoop. No mention of that. And I think that is also deliberate.
When we come back,
it is quite obvious that the central government is kind of stepping into our politics.
Kids and politics.
Now, they understand more and more that there are some institutional requirements about democracy. It's not just freedom. It's about the right to choose their government.
Stay with us.